All right, today on the Path Pavers podcast, I got a solo episode. This one's gonna be really short and brief. I just want to explain the concept of a path paver and the origin of the idea and the hypothesis that we're trying to test. Because I know I briefly talk about it in the opening and when I'm explaining to our guests the what the podcast is and the structure, etc. But I feel that a short, quick episode that can be referred to, just in case anyone has questions, is would probably be of value. So, path pavers is a hypothesis that I've been trying to test for a while now. Here, where if you want to engage in interesting work, which is work that is meaningful, provides purpose, and is fulfilling, then you must pave your own path towards that work and not follow an outlined career path. I think in other eras, maybe following an outlined career path made sense. Maybe not. I'm just assuming so. But in the modern era, I feel that it's far more dangerous to follow a crisp outlined career path than it is to pave your own path to whatever the profession may be. So some examples would be if you wanted to be an artist first, per se, one way you could go to art school, but you don't have to go to art school, right? You go to an apprenticeship, but you don't necessarily have to go to an apprenticeship, or you could just start doing art on your own, right? So we call it that could be three different paths. And then after one path, after you go to art school, you can most people would like try to get, an art job somewhere. But you can then maybe go get an apprenticeship if you want to. What I'm really trying to get to is that regardless of what path you're taking to your profession, or even if you're trying to discover what work or what profession you want to do, you should be driven by your interests and curiosities, not driven to the path that someone else paved and outlined. And for a few reasons. One, the path or the outlined path, the path that's already been outlined, is not suited for you. You're going to get to a point in time where you no longer fit the path, or you no longer have the skills, abilities, talents, or knowledge to go beyond a certain point. Second, the the trials and the challenges and the difficulties that you will see on the or that everyone comes across in life. I mean, that's a universal, but that you will come across on the paved path might be ones that you're not inspired to defeat. But if you pave your own path, the challenges and the difficulties and the tough times, those are your own, right? They're almost like catered towards you. It's in a way that w- one you might be in one phase of life that's really hard and challenging for you, but for another person that phase of life was really really easy for them. And so when you're paving your own path, that path is a reflection of you versus if you're on a paved path, that's really a reflection of the general, right? Or whoever paved that path, or more a reflection of them. And it's a very maverick like mindset, or perspective. But the more I look for it, the more I find it. Whenever I come across anybody who's involved or engaged in interesting work, or work that's just really different or unique, I find that they've at some point they got off the well-worn path and started paving their own, right? They went into the forest where they deemed it darkest. They didn't follow a path, they left a trail, to quote Emerson. And that's simply by following their instincts, their curiosity, and their interests. Um, Someone like David Epstein, he's the author of Range and Sports Genes, Sport Gene, I believe. Books, just one of my favorite books. So he originally was a research biologist. Didn't really enjoy doing that. He decided he liked sports. He ran track in college. He decided he wanted to be a sports writer, and he transitioned into being a sports writer. But because he was so well trained in research, being a biologist, he was an amazing sports researcher, and so his books are super interesting because he researches, I think, in a unique way. So if he started off always, following the career path of being a sports writer, he might not have developed the chops he did as a researcher, because in biology, I mean, that's so, especially being a biologist, being, the research you do is such an important part of the profession. Where in sports writing, I'm not saying it's not important. I'm just saying it might be a little bit, you might not need to be as proficient in it in that domain. But since he was so proficient in it and so good at it, and he referred to himself as mediocre from like a biologist perspective, but then the sports writing or sports reporting domain, he was excellent. And so that was such a natural and serendipitous, transition or, opportunity for him. But that would have never happened if he didn't decide to pave his own path. Like he could have easily said, a biologist can never be a sports writer, a research biologist. Like that doesn't make any sense. That's not the right career path. You don't have the right training, the right experience, blah, 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 blah. That's the trap, right? That we want, that I'd like to help people avoid getting in. That if you're paving your own path, you're pursuing your interests, you're pursuing your curiosity, and you're taking a chance on yourself, continue to pave. If you're following an outline path, that's probably the only time you're on the wrong path. From my perspective, the hypothesis that I'm testing. And so everything that I do in my profession, or the people that I love and respect and admire, my heroes, everything that they do in their profession is such a reflection of them and their authenticity. And I think that's what I yearn for. I yearn for a profession in which we express ourselves in an authentic way in it. Um, that's why I think we all can connect with artists in one way, shape, or form, whether it's a music artist, a painter, or a sketch artist, a graphic designer, a shoe designer, a clothing artist, right? Because we can see the really good ones that whatever they're designing is a reflection of them, right? They are expressing themselves in their work, in their profession. And I think we all yearn for that. Or maybe a lot of us do. I can't obviously speak for everyone, but I find to be really important. And whenever I come across an individual that is engaged in interesting work, again, that gives them meaning and fulfillment and purpose, they walk differently, they move differently. They feel different. There's a different energy to them. And whenever I come across someone that hates their work or can't, like, lives for the weekend or lives for the vacations, or it's just biding their time till retirement, they feel like they're the Walking Dead in a way. They if their light feels dimmer than it needs to be. And so the idea of path pavers is pave your own path to your profession, however that may be by taking chances, by entering the cave you fear the most, slaying your own dragons, right? It's more of a reflection of you and a development of you as an individual, and in a way of really discovering who you are. And then once you discover who you are, you can start to cultivate who you can be. And I don't have all the answers to that. This is just the hypothesis that I believe. And so when it comes to hiring, I love when I get a really unique work opportunity where they need a maverick type because they look different. And so when you're chasing mavericks, or chasing a path paver, you you're not, the more unique they are, the more interesting, right? Or the more different, or the more untraditional they are, the more interesting I am. And so the Path Pavers podcast is just to talk to everyone who has found interesting work by paving their own path and not following the traditional paved path to their profession. And because they did that, they express themselves in such an authentic way in their profession and produce something that simply cannot be duplicated, but maybe imitated, right? And we see this in sports all the time. I mean, someone who just has their own style of play, right? They might be playing basketball or soccer, football, or whatever, tennis, but they do it different, right? They do it in such a unique, authentic way that, I mean, my favorite example is Vasily Lomachenko, who's a boxer. Nobody boxes like him. But if you look at his background and how he became a boxer, he always wanted to be a boxer since the age of like 4. But how he became a boxer was super unique, um, than traditional individuals. Like he was an amateur far longer. I think he had 394 amateur fights, which is an insane amount, right? Where a lot of people go turn pro a little bit quicker, but they decide to go a different path. He stopped boxing for a few years, I believe, when he was like 13 or 14, in like traditional dance, and his footwork is beautiful, right? He moves just in a very poetic dance like manner, and that's part of his advantages as a boxer. And so like it isn't, a podcast about Lomachenko, even though I could talk about him for a long time. He's someone who is a boxer. He wanted to be a boxer his whole life, but the way he became a boxer was very untraditional, right? It was very authentic to him and what his father was his trainer his whole life, and what his father believed was the right way for them to do it. So they paved their own way to becoming a world champion boxer. And so that's what the Path Pavers podcast is about. It's about giving people permission to pursue their profession in the way that they see fit. Now, there is, of course, a negative rotation effect that could happen where you run away from the difficult aspects of it, and then you never get there. And so there is value in the outlined paved path from an accountability standpoint, but I think it's just dependent on the individual, the type of profession, and really what motivates them. But I believe that if you want interesting work, that the only way to find it is by paving your own path, pursuing your interests and your curiosities, and listening to the voice inside versus the noise outside. And that wraps up the solo podcast.